Gospel reading for today is from Matthew 5, verses 21 through 37. It can be found on page 4 in the New Testament section of your pew Bibles. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, 'You shall not murder,' and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, 'You fool,' you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you're offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. You have heard it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to go into hell. It was also said, 'Whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce.' But I say to you that anyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of unchastity, causes her to commit adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard it was said to those of ancient times, 'You shall not swear falsely, but carry out the vows you have made to the Lord.' But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one." May God grant us understanding of these scriptures. Amen. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. There's an overall theme, as I mentioned to the children, of the 3 lectionary readings from Scripture. It's God's commandments and our free will. What are we doing with our free will? How do we use it in service to God? And how do we pervert it in service to our own selves? This is most clearly addressed in the passage from Sirach. Now, Sirach is the teacher in this instance, and he focuses on free will versus God's will. Actually, we read from 15 to 20, but it actually is a response to verse 11, so I'm going to read that to you. Do not say, "It was the Lord's doing that I fell away," for he does not do what he hates. Do not say it was he who led me astray, for he has no need of the sinful. The Lord hates all abominations. Such things are not loved by those who fear him. It was he who created humankind in the beginning, and he left them in the power of their own free choice. Remember what we heard earlier from Bob. If you choose, you can keep the commandments and to act faithfully. It's a matter of your own choice. He has placed before you fire and water. Stretch out your hand for whichever you choose. These are important words. These are important words. Our free will can make this world a better place, or it can make it a place of injustice, oppression, and poverty, of both mind, heart, body, and spirit. Again, back to Sirach. Before each person are life and death, and whichever one chooses will be given. The readings are not playing around here. For great is the wisdom of the Lord. He is mighty in power and sees everything. So he probably saw you, Bob, when you were lying. He may not have punished you for it, allowing you to learn from your mistakes. But he sees each one of us. He sees us. And God cares what we do with our lives. It's not like I can do whatever I want, or you can do whatever you want. And God doesn't care. God cares about each one of you. God cares about this church and this community. God cares about our families. And when our temper gets the best of us, God cares. And from what Sirach is saying, God disapproves. Last line in that from 20. He has not commanded anyone to be wicked, and he has not given anyone permission to sin. God does not condone wickedness. So how do we figure out what is wicked? For the Corinthian Christians, they were very focused and placed a high premium on spiritual pursuit. Now, Fred Craddock is a noted theologian. In his book, Preaching Through the Christian Year A, he addresses this specific passage. Quote, "The desire to be spiritual people can be a worthwhile aim. But some of Paul's readers had seriously misconstrued what this entailed. They were exhibiting a form of spiritual superiority that manifested itself in arrogant behavior. Consequently, Paul reminds the church that even though certain forms of behavior are permissible, they might not be edifying." How do you use the free will that God has given you? In your workplace, in the grocery store. The other day, I was walking down an aisle, and the bill was $20, sitting in aisle 5. You know, and for like 2 seconds, I said, "Ooh, $20, that would be nice." And then I walked myself up to the service desk and brought it up. And the woman thanked me for being honest. We shouldn't be thanked for being honest. We should be honest. That's what God asks us to do. We have to begin to always kind of look through the veil of God's will. And I know I talked about this last week as well. When we act, when we talk, when we relate to one another. And that's no more telling than in Matthew, which is incredibly strong language. Paul focuses on people of the flesh versus spirituality. Now, you and I just reading that, I'm thinking flesh, right? Flesh is not referring to the physical body in this passage. It's actually the word sarx, sarx, which is a New Testament term that is uniformly negative. The connotation for sarx, or of the flesh, is a self-centered outlook and self-interest, which we all know is a very human orientation. So that's why they're contrasting that sarx, the flesh, the human orientation, with spirituality. Because remember, that was the goal of the Corinthians. And he talks to them consistently about this. So we'll probably hear more about it as we go along. The point is that our human thoughts and actions can be contrary to the fruit of the Spirit. Now, what is the fruit of the Spirit? In Galatians, Paul says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things. That's from Galatians 5, verses 22 to 23. Paul chastises the Corinthians for focusing specifically on human tendencies. He chastises them because they are focusing on themselves and not enough on God. And I would say that we all commit that error. Unless we have a saint in here. I think we all commit that error. And we can all learn from what Paul is telling the Corinthians. He is chastising them for human loyalties, like as to Paul or Apollos, versus loyalty to God. Remember, Paul planted, Apollos watered, but God gives the growth. That's the purpose of this whole passage. Salvation is through God. Healing is through God. It's not through persons, places, or things. It's about God. That's what this church is about. It's about God and the people in the church. Craddock goes on to say, quote, "And what is one of the sure signs of unspiritual behavior? Jealousy and strife." Now that's repeated in Corinthians again, in Galatians, and in James. One mark of spiritual immaturity is the inability to get along with one another. No matter what we claim, we are not spiritual if our behavior toward other members of the fellowship is marked by petty jealousy and strife. Paul's remedy for human presumption is the primacy of God and human salvation. We don't have this book for no reason. It's instructive. It helps us to understand a template for behavior, especially the New Testament. Jesus teaches us how to be with one another. So what you need to ask yourself is, what am I choosing? Am I choosing to discern God's will in this moment? I don't know. I've probably told you this story again, but it's worth repeating because it just came to my mind, maybe better than this. It's a story about a young couple who are well up the corporate ladder, and they get invited to the head of the corporation's mansion, let's say. And this woman walks in and says, oh my God, this is incredible. It's like 10 times the size of my house. I can't believe it. And they go out to dinner. He takes them to a very nice restaurant, and they get out of the car and they're walking across the street, and all of a sudden, the man stops. He picks up a penny. How many of us have picked up a penny before? Yeah, we all have. And the rule is that heads up, it's bad luck. Oh, heads up, tails up, it's bad luck. That's it. Okay, that isn't part of the story. But he picks up this penny. Now, this guy's a millionaire or a billionaire, I don't care which. But he's got lots of money. And he picks up this penny, and he stands there with a penny. And this woman doesn't know what is going on. Like, did he have a seizure? Is he just kind of temporarily gone? What's happening with him? But really felt very intimidated and didn't want to ask him what was going on. So they get to the dinner, and they're having the nice conversation and the nice meal. But it's bugging her, because she doesn't understand what happened. And so she finally says to him, she finally figures out how she can approach this. You know, I noticed that as we were coming in, you stopped and you picked up a penny. I was wondering, my daughter collects pennies. Was it a really rare penny that you found? Because you seemed to be looking at it for a while. And he handed her the penny, or a penny. And he says, what does it say on it? It says, in God we trust. And every time I see a penny that I come across unawares, I pick up that penny and ask myself, I do an internal audit. Am I trusting God? Am I trusting God in this moment, in this time? Or am I trusting myself? To end, Henry Nouwen writes in The Inner Voice of Love in a chapter called Keep Choosing God. Just trust me and let me be your God. This is the voice to listen to. And that listening requires a real choice, not just once in a while, but every moment of each day and night. It is you who decides what you think, say, and do. You can think yourself into a depression. You can talk yourself into low self-esteem. You can act in a self-rejecting way. But you always have a choice to think, speak, and act in the name of God, and so move toward the light, the truth, and the life. May it be so.